This is Support is Sexy, episode 523, with Jackie Stoughton, founder of the legal blog Jade and Oak. Welcome to Support is Sexy. I'm your host, Elayne Fluker, entrepreneur, author, and founder of Chic Rebellion Media. 5 days a week, Monday through Friday, I bring you inspiring women entrepreneurs who share their wins and lessons to help you take your business to the next level. Here we go. Hi, everyone. Welcome to a new episode of Support is Sexy. I'm happy to have you here. You know, it just would not be the same without you. And if you are a woman entrepreneur, you're building your business, maybe you've had some struggles or even some successes, but one thing is for sure, you're tired of doing it alone. Here's the thing, you don't have to. I want you to visit supportissexymastermind.com. Being in a mastermind is one of the great ways to help you move forward in your business and get the support that you need. You know, I say my work is all about living at the intersection of leadership and self-love. And in the Support is Sexy Mastermind, we make sure to focus on both, giving you the skills you need for leadership and the reminders you need for self-love and self-care. So visit supportissexymastermind.com to not only get content that supports you in both ways, but also be involved with, connected to, surrounded by a global community of women entrepreneurs who support you. Supportissexymastermind.com. Now, today we're welcoming our guest, Jackie Stoughton, and Jackie is the founder of the legal blog Jade and Oak. And in this episode, we talk about how she came to create her blog, how it started at first as a lifestyle blog, and then she, someone with a law background, decided to use her expertise and her skills to forget about the curse of knowledge, right? Sometimes we think about, well, everybody knows this because I know this. No, not necessarily. There is expertise and skills that you have that other people might want to learn from you. So Jackie did that and created her legal blog where she has not only content, but also courses, templates, a lot of information, especially for online entrepreneurs or solopreneurs, people who are starting out their business, or as your business grows, there are a lot of things to take into consideration. One of those things we discuss in detail because I was being, one of my selfish questions, GDPR. I don't know if you've received emails about this, if you're on any email list as a subscriber, even if you're not an entrepreneur, you may have seen notices about GDPR and people having to be compliant with that. So we talk about that in this episode, what this means, and what else you need to do to protect yourself and your business as an entrepreneur. So now, without further ado, Jackie Stoughton. So Jackie, thank you so much for joining us for an episode of Support is Sexy. I'm excited to chat with you.
Hi, thanks so much for having me.
So our first question, when did you first fall in love with entrepreneurship?
So it kind of was a slow development. It was probably, a couple years ago whenever I sort of went from blogging as a hobby, making it more of a business. So I was never planning for it to be a business. But then I do think, when I was a kid, I remember making like friendship bracelets and trying to sell them to people and stuff too. So maybe it was in the back of my mind and I just never thought about it. But so probably got more serious about it a few years ago.
So where did you grow up making these friendship bracelets?
So I live in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania now. And that's basically, I grew up in the suburbs. So about half an hour north of here.
Mm-hmm.
So kind of just a suburban, small town, nothing too crazy. It wasn't very rural, but it wasn't very urban either. So I think, me and my friends would do lemonade stands and play business owner type things. And I always loved doing like crafts and creative sort of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So I think there was that background to myself. I'm also, kind of a school nerd. So I think my parents had always stressed, doing really well in school, which is, your usual math and English and all those sorts of subjects. And those were always important. So I didn't always have time to take, the art classes and all of those. So I took some of those, but I think I liked being creative, but I also was really hardworking, like academically. So maybe the creative side sort of was more of a hobby. And
Mm-hmm.
then the academics was really kind of like my focus.
Who would you say were some of your greatest influences growing up?
Um, that's a good question. So I think when I was younger, um, you know, like I said, I was such a school nerd, and I really wanted to be a doctor when I was younger. That was kind of my original goal. And so I didn't have any specific role models then. And then when I was in high school, Buffy the Vampire Slayer was like my favorite show.
Yeah. With Sarah, what is it? Sarah Michelle Gellar?
Yeah,
Right.
yeah. And they were, I think the characters in the show were only a year or two older than me. And I guess I didn't realize it at the time, but she was kind of one of the first sort of strong female characters for young women. And I didn't realize that at the time, but I don't know. I think just having that as a role model was sort of interesting because, she was, kind of doing her own thing and she was a strong female. And I guess you didn't really have that. All the other shows when you're growing up as a girl are very, you're a princess and someone's
Mm-hmm.
going to save you. And she, had kind of all these,
She was the
troubles.
hero, but
Yeah.
yeah.
So it's not very businessy sort of role model, but I think growing up having like at the beginning where they were starting to have more female strong characters on TV and in entertainment was kind of a good thing to see, that I could be a doctor or something as opposed to a princess. So
Or a
yeah.
doctor and a princess, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So I think, learning that, and my parents were very supportive, of me, doing well in school and going to college and doing kind of whatever I wanted. So I think that was good too. It wasn't like I could only be, a typical sort of girly kind of career. So that was helpful too.
So did you go into school thinking that you would practice medicine, or how did you make the transition into law from wanting to be a doctor?
Yeah. Yeah. So I wasn't sure. I mean, I started college. I was the first person in my family to go to college. So my parents were very like kind of blue collar. My mom is from South Korea. So she grew up there. She moved to the States in her 20s. So she really had like almost no education.
Mm-hmm.
So I was kind of on my own with figuring out what I wanted to do in college and all of that. So I had no idea. I just kind of went in and figured I would figure it out as I went along. I switched away from medicine or science because I just didn't want to take all the science classes,
Sounds right to
basically.
me.
Yeah. So but I gravitated more towards like humanities and everything. And I originally wanted to do criminal justice, criminal law. And that's kind of where I got the interest in the law. So kind of probably halfway through college, I decided my major was criminology.
Mm-hmm.
And my plan was to go to law school after and do criminal law. That changed too, after, I worked for a couple years after college. And then by the time I got to law school, I was still interested in criminal law, but more as an academic than practicing it
Mm-hmm.
and being in criminal court and everything. So, so I didn't have a clear focus, I think, throughout school. I knew I wanted to, get a higher education, and I kind of assumed I would get some sort of graduate degree, but it was sort of like piecemeal, sort of figuring it out as I went along, which I think a lot of people do, especially if you don't maybe have someone guiding you or pushing you a certain direction. So,
Right. You were really figuring it out on your own.
yeah. My parents were very supportive, but they
Sure.
were, they weren't attorneys
Couldn't
or
speak from
doctors.
experience about, right.
Right. They wanted me to, go to school and get a good job and have a good career, but they didn't know how to do that. So, yeah, it was a good learning experience, and I think everything kind of worked out the way it was supposed to. But I don't know if a lot of other people, like young people now, I think back, I'm like, oh my gosh, how are you supposed to figure out what you want to do when you're 17 or 18 years old?
Right. It's so much. That's what I've heard people talk about that with college. It's so much responsibility to put on a person to say, what do you want to do with the rest of your life at 18 when you basically just
Yeah.
learned how to drive and you're, trying to keep your life straight, especially now with so many other distractions, which we could talk about that forever.
Right.
But just in general, we shouldn't be made to think that we're making a decision for the rest of our lives, which is what it feels like, or at least I remember it feeling like that at the time. But it's
Yeah.
more like, this is the time to figure out what you want to do with the rest of your life.
Yeah. And I know some people say, like, I always wanted to be this, and they became that, and they're perfectly fine. But I also know a lot of people who have kind of gone off the path that they originally thought.
Mhm.
And yeah, it's tough. But I think, now it is good. A lot of people do change careers or kind of spread out.
Right. And that's the thing. You can have
Yeah.
more than one career, more than
Mhm.
one kind of business. I think, people are becoming much more open to that now.
Right. Yeah. So I think it's a good thing. But yeah, definitely a learning experience.
So for you, where did you go to college and law school? Was that
So
in?
I went to college at Ohio State University in
Mhm.
Columbus, Ohio. And then after that, I worked for a few years, and then I went to law school at the University of Pittsburgh. So back where I'm from, I kind of ended up back here, and after law school, stayed here.
And then you teach law there? You mentioned that you wanted to go more into the academic side.
So no, I wanted to go into more academic side. I think with the criminal side, I was hoping to do more of the research aspect. But as a lawyer, you don't really do that.
Hmm.
You would be in court and stuff. So after law school, I ended up working in civil litigation for about 3 years, and that's when I started my blog. Um, as a lifestyle blog, because I think this is going back to the whole like creative side
Creative
of
side.
myself. Yeah.
Right. Hmm.
I was, doing litigation, and it was kind of, very tedious, and it wasn't something I really loved. And I was reading blogs, like home decorating blogs and recipe blogs and travel blogs, just getting so inspired by what other people were doing. And I think a lot of people at that time were just doing it for fun, or, sharing a few things here and there, making a little bit of money. And I was like, oh my gosh, I love this. And it's inspiring me to, decorate our house and try new recipes and try to be better at photography and all of those kind of like creative things. So I started a blog then as a creative outlet to, my day job was kind of dry and,
This
you
was your
know,
creative outlet, like you said.
yeah, yeah. So
What
that's
year
kind of
was that?
So that was probably 2012. So,
Okay. So not too long ago. So then
yeah.
when did the blog transition into becoming, and I don't, or was it a different blog? I don't know if this is the
Mhm.
same one, but when did it transition into you focusing on talking about law in the way that you do on your blog?
So I had, the lifestyle blog for a few years, and I was sort of making friends who were doing similar things
Mhm.
and learning from each other and kind of growing and all of that. And I started seeing more and more people turning their, blogs or websites more into a business. They weren't just writing about their life. They were making it a little more focused, maybe more sponsored posts, more ads. People were starting to, sell products and services and courses, designers and VAs and all of those things. So I saw more and more people doing that. And I thought, I'm spending so much time on this blog, and it's really a hobby and I love it, but, you know, is there something more I could be doing? And I never thought I would talk about the legal side, because that was my day job and the blog was my fun stuff.
Mhm.
But I saw the need, because I saw more and more people making these businesses and maybe not doing everything that they should be doing legally. And then I was kind of doing research on my own too. I was like, well, if I'm a lawyer and I'm going to be talking about the legal side, am I doing everything right? Giveaways and sponsored posts and all of those sorts of things. So I decided to start sharing it a little bit and seeing what people thought. And so many people were coming to me and saying, oh my gosh, I never knew about this. Like, thank goodness you told me, no one's talking about this. So I kind of expanded from there, realizing that it was something that I could provide to help people make sure that they were doing things correctly, legally. And especially a lot of people who went from, being a blogger or a small business to suddenly making more money and maybe opening themselves up to more legal issues.
Mm-hmm.
I wanted to be kind of a resource where they could make sure that they were doing things the right way. But I also knew none of these people, or a lot of these people, weren't going to be going out and getting an attorney or hiring someone to help them. So I just thought I could fill that kind of gap. And
Right.
yeah, so then it kind of grew from there. And yeah, so it sort of organically kind of changed focus.
And you've been doing that now. And your website, of course, everyone, I'll have a link to it, but it's jadeoak.com.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So what is I should say, how long ago did you make that transition where you're much more legally focused now on your website?
So I think that was like 2 or 3 years ago.
Okay.
Um, yeah, I'll
And
have
have
to
you
check the
seen
dates.
did you see a big difference in the response, as you mentioned, to when you were focused more on the lifestyle side and now being more focused on really an area of expertise?
Yeah, definitely. And I think, I might have lost some followers or something, but, because I went
Mhm.
from talking about fun, my life or those sorts of things to more of a teaching aspect.
Mhm.
But I've had, really good responses. So many people, who maybe have been following me for a while or new people finding me. It's been really good because I think especially people who are just starting out or just kind of easing into the business realm.
Yeah, I was going to say, it seems like it's a great resource. Of course, I looked at your website, a great resource for people starting
Mhm.
out, or as you said, if you have a blog or a website and then you're doing things like now you're doing sponsored posts or you're starting to make
Mhm.
money in other ways or advertising and all these things that, which we're going to talk about some later, we might not think about as we even grow beyond just starting.
Right. Yeah. So I think a lot of people have found it helpful because they're, not seeing other people talk about it, or where people are talking about the legal side, it's at like this higher level where they're
Mhm.
not there yet, where they're not ready to be, registering as an LLC or trademarking things or anything like that. Maybe they don't need, these complex contracts or anything, but they're just starting out. And, the things like sponsored posts, you have to disclose that. And, having all the proper statements on your blog or your website, keeping people's privacy, kind of basic tax information. What do I do? I just started making, you know, $200 a month this year or something like that. So where people are just kind of starting out, they're not ready to hire maybe their own attorney. So I think it's helpful. And then, people who are a little bit further along, I have some things like contracts and other tips and
Templates and
information.
things.
Yeah.
Yeah. So would
Mm-hmm.
you say that your site is more so, it's not about people coming to you as an attorney to
Mm-hmm.
get like, as a practice or something. It's more so you are providing all this information, templates. I saw you had the what is it, privacy policy in terms. I was looking at that like, oh, I need to download that. I see you have a lot of great templates and things like that. So are you more so, you think, being a resource for people as opposed to come to you to get legal work with you as opposed to coming to you to work with you as a lawyer or an attorney?
Right. Yeah. Yeah. And that was where I kind of struggled at first, where could I fit in?
Mhm.
Because, if someone hires me as their attorney, that is a different level of kind of responsibility and accountability that you have and legal, responsibility. And I'm licensed in Pennsylvania. So, a lot of things on the internet are sort of
All
broader.
over, right?
Yeah. But, if someone has a very specific contract question and they're in a different state, that could be governed by those states' laws. So I can't do that. But, privacy policy statements for your website or, a general contract that's not necessarily, under a specific state's law, I can help with those. So that's why I sort of provide, legal information / education as opposed to legal one-on-one advice.
Mm-hmm.
So that's kind of the difference. And so I'm more on the end of like a legal Zoom or something as opposed to you went down the street and hired an attorney.
Right.
So, and the thing with like, legal Zoom or other places where you can get templates is, you're providing this information for someone and they're able to customize it for themselves. It's still, legally helpful because it's having a lot of this language, but it's not necessarily tailored by me specifically for that person. So, It's a good way to be able to provide legal information without me doing one-on-one statements for everyone, which would obviously take a lot more time for me, and it would be a lot more costly. So
Right. So for you, would you say that your business is primarily set up with people downloading templates and things from your website, like getting information in that
yeah.
way?
Yeah, definitely. And I've had people approach me to do, custom or, personalized contract work for them. And it's just not something I do now. I'm not a law firm. I'm a business.
Hmm.
So if I were to be, writing a custom contract for someone, I would be practicing law, and I would need to be a law firm and have malpractice insurance and everything. So it's a much bigger sort of scale, and I see other people doing it online. It's definitely something you can do, but it's not something I want to do right now. So this is a good happy medium where I can help people a lot. It doesn't take as much of my time and effort.
And you still
And
have a full-time job while you're building your business.
yeah, exactly. And then I figure also for these people who are just starting out, the budget is a lot easier for them too, because it's not those like hourly billable rates
Right.
for attorneys, which can be insane. So
Right.
I feel
So
like
for
it
you,
kind of works.
so for you, are you planning to build your business and then move on to doing it, working on it full time, or do you enjoy having both the full time job and then your business also?
So for right now, I like where I'm at. It would be good to keep scaling my business without necessarily putting more hours in constantly.
Hmm.
But yeah, I have a full-time job now. I work at a bank, and I have pretty good, I'm not at a law firm anymore, so I don't have crazy law firm hours. So I have kind of more manageable hours, and I'm able to still have a life, and then I come home and I'm able to work on my business. And if I'm tired, I do the one or two things I might have for my business. But if I'm not feeling it, I can kind of say like, oh, I'll look at that later. So it's a good balance for me. I think if I didn't have a side business, I don't know what I would do. I can't like really sit still and like watch TV for hours every night. So it's keeps me busy and challenged, and it's still creative, doing, learning about social media and learning about different marketing techniques, all of those things. I like that learning aspect. But yeah, I don't know. I have no plans right now to make it my business, my full time. But things could change. So we'll kind of see. I'm having a baby in the fall.
Yeah,
So
it's in November, right?
yeah, yeah.
Yay,
So
congratulations.
thank you. So I'll be off of work, my day job for a few months, and we'll see how it goes. But my plan is to go back to work and kind of go from there. But yeah, I know lots of times when you're starting your family, things can change. So
Right, right.
I'm open
So
to it, but we'll see.
we're
Yeah.
open. So, what advice do you have for women listening about tapping into an expertise they already have that they may want to turn into either a full business or just even offer as services? And I ask that because a lot of time, they call it the curse of knowledge, right? We
Mm.
try all these other things instead of, maybe not instead of, but we don't think at first to say, as you did eventually, oh, I
Mm-hmm.
can create a business that I love with the expertise I already have in the field of law, but still make it creative and fun and my own. We just look
Mm-hmm.
for, I have to do something totally different. So what advice do you have, if any, about tapping into expertise you already have and thinking about turning it into something?
Yeah, I think it was something I hadn't thought about, like we had discussed. I thought, oh, this is separate, but then it kind of fell into place. So I think sometimes you choose your niche. You say, I want to be this sort of business, this sort of person. But in my case, and maybe in other people's cases, your niche almost chooses you.
Hmm.
You might be fighting against it because you have this knowledge and you don't want to be focusing your business on that. But I think sometimes you have to just kind of be open to it. For me, I never thought I would be blogging or writing about the legal side, but then I realized, I have the knowledge, but I don't have to make it like how my day job is. I can make it more interesting. I can make it more accessible to people. So I think, yeah, anyone who has that knowledge and you're willing to share, it's a lot easier because you already have that experience. You have that expertise, you have, the professional experience under your belt, and you can start sharing those things with people. And and things to me that seem very obvious sometimes with the legal side, I realize it's not, because other people, that's not their area of expertise. So I think other people who have knowledge, it can be super helpful to share that, because you're helping people, and it's not that much work for you almost, because it's already sort of in your head and you're just sort of putting it out there. So,
and I think one of the things that you said that's important too is that it doesn't have to look a certain way, or you don't have to deliver it a certain way. Of course, you want to be, obviously, especially with legal, ethical, and follow all of the rules on that. But I mean, the way that you're doing it, like, it doesn't have to be you providing law services to someone, or it doesn't have to be. So sometimes I think we get caught up in that too, thinking it has to be a certain way, as opposed to, we can create this to be whatever we want, because it's our business and our service, and we're providing people what we know.
Yeah, definitely. And I think too, I've read this quote or something, I don't know from who, but it's almost like you're being selfish by not sharing your knowledge with people. And I don't know if it's necessarily selfishness, but if you have this knowledge that, it can take you half an hour to write a blog post about all this stuff, when it would take, your reader hours and hours to learn that.
Right.
You're being super helpful, and then, you could share those things. And then if you want to turn them into a business, you can monetize that and figure out a way to serve people and help people, and make it a side business for yourself, or, eventually a full-time business. So I think that's great when people are sort of capitalizing on their own talents and skills. You aren't reinventing the wheel or whatever. You're just kind of sharing what you already know, and just, fine tuning it in order to help other people.
Packaging it, right.
Yeah. Yeah.
One of the recent things you addressed on your website for online entrepreneurs, which of course my eyes, if your eyes perk up, I guess that's a mixed metaphor, but I was eyes wide open when I saw about GDPR. A lot of us, I'm sure, have gotten emails about it and saw so much about it, especially, was it last month or maybe a couple of months ago? So I wanted to know from you, what is GDPR? What do we need to know about it?
So it's a new law in the EU, basically, with all the security breaches and hacks and people's information being taken by, different sites, and being, things that we access online. They really wanted to tighten the laws there and make it, a lot harder for their citizens' information to be taken and used, without their permission. So basically, it went live, or, went into effect, I think, May 25th. And it's saying that anyone who has a website where someone who's in the EU, the European Union, is accessing that website, you basically can't take their information without their explicit permission. So the big thing is, obviously, if someone leaves you like a blog comment or sends you an email or something, you aren't just adding them to your email list. They are, they're only being added with their consent. So that's a big thing. Obviously, so many people use opt-ins for building their email list and building, marketing and everything. So you want to make sure whenever anyone's opting in to get your freebie, it's very clear that they're being added to your email list.
Now, sorry to interrupt, how do we make it clear that, because I think that's the thing sometimes, and I've done that, sign up for a free, I usually assume it's just part of the process, but then I notice now that I sign up for a lot of things that I do get tons of emails about other stuff, because they've automatically added me to their list, whoever it is. So what are the best ways for us to make sure? Is it as simple as a line on the opt-in that says you will also be added to et cetera list, or?
So that can make it very clear. I think, with the law, they wanted us to go one step further and have you, affirmatively check a box. I understand by downloading this freebie, I'm going to be added to your email list, or, where they can, check to be included, or I guess leave the box open and unchecked, saying that they just want the freebie and they don't want to be added to your list. So I think there's different plugins and those sorts of things that can help you with that. It's more of a tech thing, but it's basically, you're not adding anyone to your list. You're not, basically storing their email address without their permission. And then the other side of that is where most websites have, tracking cookies or Google Analytics or any of those things. And those are collecting people's personal information as well. Basically, it's not necessarily collecting their name or anything, but it's their IP address, where they're from, where they're kind of logging in from, and those sorts of things. So you'll see a lot of people now have it on the front page of their website. This website uses tracking cookies. It's, we're not storing your personal data, or it's just being used for traffic,
traffic and
purposes.
targeting for ads and that kind
analysis.
of thing.
Yeah. And so basically people have to click accept so they can move forward. And I think most people probably do at this point, but it's, reminding people, it's popping up, it's in their face saying, just, if you continue, like we may be collecting some of your data, but we're obviously not going to be selling it, using it, for inappropriate purposes or anything. So those are the big things. It's if you take anything away from GDPR, just think consent, like explicit consent.
Right. So with the cookies, is that something that I've seen those pop-ups on several websites? Some seem like they pop up even just in the browser. Is that something that is something that we can just add to our websites, or is there does that come through a plugin? Do you know also, or what are the ways? I'm asking for myself, but also for people who already have their website up and running. How do they now? What are the ways that you've seen that people easily add this to their website to get this consent for the cookies, especially?
Yeah, I think the main way is probably to find a good plugin that pops up and lets people know, because for the most part, people can turn cookies off, I think, in their browser, but I think it's probably hard, and most of us do want to track, how many site visits we have and how many new visitors we have. So most sites are still going to be collecting that information. If you have, Google Analytics, it's sort of, I'm not very techy, but it's running in the background. It's collecting that information, and I think it's being stored, somewhere else. You might not have direct access to that, but basically having, if you're going to have that if you're going to be collecting that information, you want it to be very clear to whoever's coming to your site. And I think for the most part, people, I think, expect that. I haven't heard anything else where people are, not going to someone's site because they have cookies or tracking cookies. But obviously, if you pop into a site and it obviously looks like spam or shady, you're gonna kind of run away.
Exactly. Say no, thank you, and close it out.
Yeah.
So for everyone listening who doesn't know, cookies, I think it's on mostly everyone's computer, but as we said, now it's a matter of giving your consent for people so you're very aware that the website, et cetera, is tracking where you're about. And usually it's not for anything malicious. In most cases, it's again for analytics or the person who owns that website, or for, I know in my case, sometimes we send ads to the person that'll pop up on another website they go to. If there's a space for a Google ad that just says, based on you visiting my site and maybe another like it, you might be a woman entrepreneur, here's an ad, etc. So those are the kind of things that, like you, I'm not a techie person, but just so like, what are cookies? Why are they talking about cookies? That's tracking. So another couple of other things that you mentioned in this too, as far as 3 things we need to be concerned about: consent, we just discussed, also data breaches. So what are the ways that we, even if we're not responsible, this just happened to me also, even if we are not responsible, but a company, say, that we use for email collection or something like that has a data breach, what is our responsibility?
Right. So unfortunately, it is our responsibility. So if you do use an email service provider or something like Google Analytics, or maybe, Amazon affiliate links or things like that, it is our responsibility, if it kind of filtered through our website onto this other like third party. So if they have a breach, and then basically the rules with the GDPR are that you need to be addressing it, I think it's 48 hours. So sort of an ASAP situation. So I think I haven't heard of anything happening yet. So it'll be interesting to see how it goes down, I guess, what happens, the first time there is a breach, where a larger company, they're going to be on the hook. Obviously, they have the resources, they have the tech people. Larger companies are supposed to have a specific person dedicated to like kind of this privacy side of things. So I'm thinking, those companies are going to be finding the breaches and letting people know right away. So if your email service provider emails you and says, we've had a breach and there's been this, group of people's information has been compromised, then it's on you to then disseminate that information to your audience or people who may be affected. So I haven't heard of anything happening yet, but it's basically...
I can tell you a company, Typeform.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Have you heard of Typeform? It's like a survey kind of company. Beautiful. You can create beautiful surveys and things, or questionnaires, forms, etc. So they had one recently, and they sent information that you should send out to your people and that kind of thing. So that's an example of a company that had to send it out right away and then tell people to send to their people. Even though it's not a form that I use, it's not on my website for everyone listening, just to understand, but it's a link, you're sending people there to enter their information. So I would imagine that's still all part of it. You're just letting people know that this happened.
Yeah. I think it'll be interesting to see how things play out, because it's sort of, Brave New World internet where it was sort of a free for all for
Wild West for a while.
Yeah. And now, this is kind of the first or one of the bigger, laws and regulations that's really trying to tighten things up. And it's not in the US, but it affects, pretty much all of us, because anyone from the EU or anywhere in the world could be accessing our websites. So even though, it's a European law, it does affect us. And, the law has written into it really steep fines for companies who, have a breach or non-compliant. So I think it'll be, we'll kind of see how it plays out and how it sort of trickles down to maybe the smaller websites and companies. And it's all new, so we'll sort of see what happens, but it'll be interesting to see, how companies change or if smaller businesses, are nervous about starting up or something. So I think we'll all sort of see how it goes. So.
And one of the third things you mentioned is the right to be forgotten. What does that mean?
So that is basically if someone comes up to you and says, I'm on your list, like I don't want to be on your list. And, you basically need to be able to delete all of their information. Anyone has the right to do that at any time. So you need to understand how to do that. I think for the most part, for most of us, that would be our email list. And it's not just, maybe unchecking that subscriber and saying, don't send them emails anymore. It's completely deleting them. And then I think you'll really want to check with your email service provider to make sure that they aren't keeping something, I don't know, shadows of their information or like some sort of cookies or something where the person's data is hidden somewhere else. So kind of checking with the company as well, because you're not, probably keeping that on your own computer or laptop or server, but just making sure that the companies that you work with are reputable. They're bigger tech companies. They're supposed to have these people in place who are checking all those things. So just making sure that they're doing what they're supposed to be doing. So you have the peace of mind to tell your people that you're compliant because you're working with reputable companies.
Now, is right to be forgotten different, though, than if someone just unsubscribes from your list, then you unsubscribe them, you don't email them again. But is right to be forgotten an extra step that the subscriber would have to request? Like, I want you to erase everything? Or is this basically the same as unsubscribe?
I think it's a little bit more than unsubscribe, because I think... And I haven't, heard any specific situations of it yet, but I think it's a little bit broader or, a little more intense than that, because otherwise, you can, the US email marketing laws, have that you need to be able to have someone or be able to allow someone to unsubscribe.
Right.
But, this law is going a little bit further. So I think it's making sure there isn't that like sort of trace data still sitting out there on a server where, you could easily bring them back as a subscriber or something like that. So I think it's more technical, where their information is completely deleted as opposed to they're just simply unsubscribed.
If they request that. They
Yeah.
want you to get, okay, got it.
Yeah.
Ooh, people, a lot to think about. Well, luckily, all of this is on jadeoak.com. So we can look it up and see some of it. This is where I found it. And like I said, very intrigued because there's been so much talk about this. And, people have said, this is what it means. That's what it means. But it's good to kind of hear some from a practical standpoint. This is what that looks like and examples. So thank you for that.
Oh, of course. Yeah. And I think it can mean different things depending on your company too. So I think, bigger companies, like I said, I can't remember what the threshold is for how many employees. If you have a certain number
more or something like
that.
that.
Yeah, I thought it was about 100.
Okay.
If you have more than that, you need to have a specific person assigned to basically be handling all of this, or a team, probably if you're a really large company. So it's going to be different. When I was doing my research, I was seeing a lot of that information, but I was like, well, I want to be talking to the people who have their sole proprietors, they're a one person shop,
right?
Or, they have, a handful of employees or people working with them, because it's very different, and how all of us can be compliant and not, stress or lose sleep about it.
What would you say entrepreneurship has taught you about yourself as a woman?
I think that I can really push myself to learn anything. And like I said, I like to continue to learn, and it's given me an outlet for that. But it's also been, whenever I started my blog, it was hideous and, I didn't know what I was doing. But learning all those things, I've loved that process of learning, better design techniques. I'm not, a designer or a marketer or anything like that, but learning all those things and knowing that I could go from point, A 6 years ago to where I'm at now has been great. And it just grows your confidence and shows you, you don't need to have a business degree. You don't need to, be starting, a brick and mortar store in order to be an entrepreneur anymore.
And I think it's a great point too. Like you said, you started off and your website was not too pretty, but we all go through that stage. And sometimes people don't even start because they know their website is not going to be pretty. But at least for everyone listening, remember, you have to start and then you evolve over time, right? You learn, as you said, you learn as you go.
Right. Yeah. Everyone starts somewhere. And if you don't start, then you never get past that point. So I think it's important to know that probably going to suck at the beginning. And
right. That's right. There's I don't know is it a book or maybe just something I hear someone say on podcast, just basically be prepared to suck at it at first. Right. It's just part of the process.
It's just like anything else, riding a bike and learning to drive and all of it. You're going to suck. And if you don't get over that hump and kind of accept that you're going to suck.
Right, exactly.
You're never going to get better.
There's a website too. Gosh, I'm not remembering anything today. I'll find everything, everyone, and put the links. But there's a website too where you can see the first version of websites of these huge companies.
Oh, wow.
I've linked to it before. I have to find it, but it's just interesting to go back and look at Google when it first started, or everything, because we just think of what we know now, but start somewhere. And if you look, you just would be like, I can't believe we trust these people with our information now.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, definitely. So we all start somewhere. So I think, getting started is like hard, and it can sometimes be the hardest part, but then after that, it's sort of, you get used to it.
So in closing, if you think over your life and career and you had the chance to thank only one person whose support was critical to you personally or professionally, who would that be and what would you say?
I would say my father. He's always been very, very supportive of me, but has also always pushed me. And I think, like I said, with the whole not knowing what I was doing with college and stuff, he pushed me to, he was like, you can figure this out and you can do this. And I have faith in you. And he was always supportive, but kind of forcing me to be independent as well. So I think it's always good to have someone in your life who is supportive of you, but pushing you, but also telling you that they're proud of you. So it was a very good, mix of some tough love and some hand holding.
That's a
So
good one.
yeah. So definitely I would say my dad.
Excellent. So
Yeah.
now what are the ways that we can support you? Tell everyone again your website, anything else you want us to know, social media, etc. I'll have links to everything, but just so everyone can hear it.
Okay, yeah, great. So my website is jadeoak.com. There's a lot of stuff on there. There's the blog posts, which are free. I have free resources. I have a couple free email courses, and then there's some paid content as well, some templates. I have an ebook, legal guides, and a course, 2 courses as well. So, and then I'm on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, and Pinterest. I pin a ton. So there's a lot of information there as well.
You love Pinterest? Is that
Yes.
where you hang out? Is
Yeah.
that at Jade Oak also?
It's actually at Jackie Jade. So some of my handles are different and
Okay.
haven't been
Sure
updated.
okay.
But I'll give you, we'll have all the links. So.
Oh, excellent. I can't wait to look at your Pinterest. So many, I shouldn't say so many, but quite a few women that I speak to talk about how they use Pinterest for their business.
Yes. Yeah,
Yes.
I definitely use it a lot. So I pin a lot and I find so many great resources. I try to, share a lot of other people's resources as well.
Do you see a lot of results from it and people, I guess, liking or coming back to your website from that?
Yeah, it's definitely my number one traffic referrer. So I try to, keep adding new pins and
Right.
updating it. But then, being on the other social media channels, I think is important too. So
Exactly. Everyone loves Instagram and I do too, but it's so funny. It doesn't, at least for most of the women that I talk to, maybe a few people it does, but doesn't really drive traffic because they won't allow, the live links and that kind of thing other than in your bio.
Right. I think I use Instagram more as like a kind of behind the scenes, kind of about me stuff, because I don't have, a very visual business. I think for a lot of people, if you're, a fashion blogger or maybe a photographer or something, I'm totally not a photographer. So it's more just, sharing a little bit more about me personally.
That's a good way to think about it, like an about me.
Yeah, I think it's, more personal, a little bit of business stuff, but then Pinterest is really great for, finding new people or getting new people to find my content. If they're searching or just trying to like update and fix up their website or blog, hopefully they'll kind of stumble across some of my pins.
So before you go, Jackie, what's a parting piece of advice from you to our listeners about anything?
I think what we had touched upon was really great about, getting started. And I think for people who are afraid to get started or afraid to put themselves out there, they need to just go for it. I talk to a lot of people or I get emails from people saying, they've been researching and they're so excited to start their blog, but they're worried. And I just think, I probably did not enough research at all when I started my blog, but I gave myself that grace period to evolve and learn. And I think that's kind of the best way that you get better and you get more comfortable.
All right. I hope you enjoyed that conversation with Jackie. To find out more about her, to find out more about her website, the templates, the courses, all the great stuff that she has, and to see what she's doing on Pinterest, you can find it all at supportissexypodcast.com. Just go to that search icon at the top and type in Jackie, Jackie. Her show notes page will pop up with the links and the resources mentioned in this episode. Supportissexypodcast.com and just search Jackie. Please make sure that you and I are connected on social media. I want to see what you're up to, not only what you're listening to, which I hope is the Support is Sexy podcast regularly, but also what you're doing in your business, what you're doing with your family. Let's just make sure we're connected. I am at Elayne Fluker and at Support is Sexy. Thank you so much for listening. I appreciate you. And until we chat again, always remember that support is sexy and having it all doesn't mean doing it all alone. And I'll talk to you soon. Take care.